Hey, good morning, friends. Welcome to The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Our number today and every day on The Bright Side, 844-236-6010. If you have questions about health, nutrition, prescription drugs, if you want to get off your meds and get on a good nutritional supplement program, or if you just want to contribute to the conversation, we love hearing from you. 844-236-6010 is our number. We'll get your calls. Next segment, John Perkins will be with us at the bottom of the hour. John is the author of numerous books, including Confessions of an Economic Hitman. If you have not read that and you have any interest in politics or geopolitics or how the world works, this is a absolute must-read. He's got multiple books, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, Hoodwinked, The New Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I've read multiple books of John Perkins. His latest book is Touching the Jaguar, Transforming Fear into Actions to Change Your Life and the World. John has gotten himself into shamanism, and he's gotten himself into indigenous wisdom, and he's going to talk to us about his really very eclectic and very interesting background. I hope to talk a little bit about Confessions of an Economic Hitman, but we'll mostly talk about Touching the Jaguar with John Perkins at the bottom of the hour. And then we'll get your calls in our next segment, 844-236-6010, if we have calls, 844-236-6010. If you want to purchase longevity products, head to brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com. You can also call 866-735-2470 if you'd like to speak to a real live person. And don't forget to click on the Join the Team link if you want to sign up to join the Brightside Ben team and start a home-based business that makes you some money and helps change the world at the same time. If you're an entrepreneur, it's a perfect business opportunity. Click on the Join the Team link at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, or criticalhealthnews.com for a one-time $30 fee. You can be in business for yourself, or you can call 866-735-2470 for more information. 866-735-2470. Okay, so we have been talking about fats and the distinction between fats and water, the nutrient, the vitamin-like substance choline. Yesterday we said choline is it's a building block. Just like Tinker Toys have building blocks, have components, choline is a building block of macromolecules. And one of the most important of those macromolecules that are composed partially of choline is acetylcholine. It's a little piece of that's a little molecule or a chemical, we could say, or a macromolecule called acetyl, and then choline, acetylcholine. And it's one of the most critical and functional and life-giving molecules in the body. It's a nerve chemical, neurotransmitters associated with muscle contractions and blocking. And there are drugs that actually block acetylcholine and can cause so much relaxation that you can get paralyzed. These drugs are used when medical professionals want to paralyze their patients. Yes, indeed. Sometimes medical professionals want to paralyze their patients, and these drugs are called paralytics. They induce paralysis. They're referred to as NMBDs, neuromuscular blocking drugs, and they're used for airway management when they want to put a ventilator down your throat. If you ever have an opportunity to say no to a ventilator in the hospital, say no. You do not want a ventilator in your lungs unless you absolutely have no options. Basically, you're brain dead or something. NMBDs, neuromuscular blocking drugs, are also used to lower body temperature, to protect the brain after cardiac arrest. When the heart stops, blood flow to the brain is impacted, and by lowering the body temperature, permanent damage can sometimes be prevented, and that's what these NMBDs do. These NMBDs, all these neuromuscular blocking drugs, are based on the famous poison arrow blow dart that South American indigenous hunters still use. They have a resiny substance that's made up of a bunch of different plants, and they paint their dart tips with it. And this resiny substance is generically referred to as curare. Curare is a powerful blocker of acetylcholine, hence it induces paralysis. In fact, these NMB drugs are basically based on the science of curare. Curare itself and analogs of curare were used in medicine for surgical procedures and also to stop convulsions and seizures until more modern medicine that had less toxicity and fewer side effects were invented in the 1950s and 1960s. Blocking acetylcholine also has some cosmetic angles. During the Middle Ages, it was discovered that liquid extracts of a plant called the deadly nightshade, and indeed it was deadly. You've probably heard of nightshade veggies like potatoes and tomatoes and eggplants and peppers. By the way, there was just an interesting study about chili peppers yesterday. I was reading about how chili peppers can have powerful anti-inflammatory benefits. We'll read that in our next talk about that in our next segment. The deadly nightshade is a nightshade, and it's deadly. Pretty much all nightshades are deadly, but they just don't have enough deadly poison in them. I shouldn't say they're deadly. They're toxic, but they don't have enough toxins in them to be deadly. The technical name is the Solanaceae species of these plants. Colloquially, we refer to them as nightshades. And some of them are deadly, or at least the deadly nightshade is deadly. And it's really deadly. It contains some nasty chemicals in there, atropine, one of them. And this stuff is really, really potent. But in the Middle Ages, they found that it could make your eyes bigger and make your eyes more attractive. So they used to use it as eye drops, and they would paint their face with it or use it as toners on their face. And they'd make their face red. The deadly nightshade is also known as belladonna, which means pretty woman or beautiful lady. And cosmetic products in the Middle Ages used this deadly nightshade or beautiful lady, belladonna plant. Eventually, however, it was noticed that the deadly nightshade extracts were killing people, and they were making them toxic. And it kind of fell out of favor and started to be used by assassins and murderers instead. In fact, famously, Macbeth, the King of Scotland, was killed with the deadly nightshade. Actually, Emperor Claudius of Rome and a couple other Roman emperors, Emperor Augustus, I think, they were all killed by deadly nightshade. The toxic compounds of deadly nightshade, by the way, are called atropine and scopolamine. And these molecules are so deadly that if you add a few drops to your wine, if you want to kill the emperor, if you add a few drops to his wine, you're going to kill him. Or if you put it in a little bit in your meal, you can cause paralysis or severe hallucinations or delusions or convulsions and ultimately death. But these chemicals actually do have some medical applications, and they're used as treatments for low heart rate and also to dry up the body before surgery to reduce secretions. Atropine eye drops are also used to treat eye inflammations. Scopolamine, which is another component, also known as hyoscine, is another component of the deadly nightshade or belladonna plant. It has motion sickness benefits, and you can, if you go out on a cruise and you get seasick, they'll give you a patch that you put in under your ear called transderm scope, which is scopolamine. It's kept in emergency rooms on cruise ships. I used to compound scopolamine gel for folks who were in hospices. There's something very interesting and tragic that happens as we die. Our body starts to liquefy. And turns out, well, we'll continue to come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. 844-236-6010 is our number. John Perkins will be with us at the bottom of the hour. We'll be back on the bright side right after this. All right, we're back on the bright side. I am Pharmacist Ben. Thanks for joining us. John Perkins will be with us at the bottom of the hour. We're going to talk about his multiple books. Psychonavigation, Techniques for Travel Beyond Time. Confessions of an Economic Hitman really changed my life when I read it. Also, Hoodwinked, the New Confessions of an Economic Hitman, The Secret History of the American Empire, Shapeshifting. We'll talk about his new book, which is about changing the world with our stories. The new book is called Touching the Jaguar, but I hope to talk to John Perkins about Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which is really an amazingly important book. All four of it's kind of like, there's four books that are all basically about the same idea, about how the world is, the economics of geopolitics, basically. And when he says economic hitman, he really means hitman. I mean, economic hitmen kill people. They kill heads of state who don't cooperate. They kill people in government who don't cooperate. And when I say don't cooperate, I mean don't cooperate economically. And it's just a fascinating story. And if you haven't read Confessions of an Economic Hitman and you think you know about how geopolitics works, you really need to read it. Everybody needs to read this book. We'll talk to John Perkins at the bottom of the hour, and then we'll get your calls. This segment, hang tight if you're on hold. I'll get you. I want to finish just talking about this story about scopolamine, which is an ingredient that's found in, or a component that's found in the belladonna plant, the pretty woman plant, also known as deadly nightshade. Scopolamine, I used to make a scopolamine gel when I was in my compounding pharmacy for folks who are in hospices. Right before you die, some of you guys might know this, that when somebody dies, the last 48 hours of their death, or of their life, before they die, their cells start to leak. And it's very, very painful. It's very, very uncomfortable. It produces a sound called the death rattle, which is basically the fluids in the body starting to flow out of the cells. It's a really uncomfortable condition. I used to make a product called a transdermal scopolamine gel, basically using the scopolamine to drive the body. Anticholinergics, drugs that block up acetylcholine, have a drying effect. And scopolamine is a very, very powerful anticholinergic. This transderm scope provided some palliative benefits for the unfortunate patient who is going through this horrible process. All right, real quick, I want to read this story. I read this morning. I want to read this to you about chili peppers. Regular chili pepper consumption could help you live longer. And this is according to a review that was presented at the American Heart Association's Scientific Session 2020. It turns out that folks who eat a lot of chili peppers have a significant reduction in all-cause, as well as cardiovascular and cancer-related mortalities. Chili pepper is an anti-inflammatory, it's antioxidant, it's anti-cancer, it's blood glucose. It has blood glucose stabilizing effects. And all of this is similar to its medicinal properties and its actual drug-like properties. Chili peppers are a member of the nightshade family, and a lot of folks can't eat peppers and can't eat chili peppers. Some folks can't even eat black pepper, can't even sprinkle black pepper on their food because pepper is a nightshade and it will induce inflammatory effects inside the body. But it turns out that the tiny little amount of toxin that's in the chili peppers also has anti-inflammatory benefits, which is really interesting because it turns out that things that are anti-inflammatory and things that are inflammatory sometimes overlap, which is really interesting. So if you enjoy chili peppers, keep enjoying them. If you have arthritis or you have an inflammatory health issue, you may want to stay away from them. But if not, enjoy your chili peppers. It'll help you live longer. All right, 844-236-6010 is our number. We'll continue talking about acetylcholine blocking tomorrow, and we'll talk about a really famous cosmetic ingredient that takes advantage of acetylcholine blockade for beauty. We'll do that tomorrow on The Bright Side. Time to hit the phones, 844-236-6010. And let's go to my friend in Moscow, Kevin. Greetings, Kevin. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, buddy. I'm very excited about John Perkins you're going to have on.
I figured you'd know about John Perkins. Yeah. You seem like the kind of guy that would know about. Isn't he amazing? Isn't his stuff amazing?
Definitely. I liked it so much. I got the books, and I got the audio book. So when I'm walking about, I'm listening to it.
Don't you think everybody needs to read that stuff? I mean, we all need to know that stuff.
Without a doubt, but, you could bring the horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. By the way, Kevin, thank you so much for doing those YouTubes. For the listeners, Kevin is the guy who puts all those YouTubes out, and I'm very grateful that you do that, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Well, it's all due to my good computer. It saves me a lot of time, and I do it like a metronome. It's just ingrained in me.
Good deal.
Exactly.
Good deal.
All rhythm. I know it so well. I look at the audio pattern, and I ask you occasionally, is it a different guy on the board?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You do. Well, you have an audio background. Don't you have or just engineering?
Just playing music and having synthesizers and cool devices.
All right. So what's going on today in Moscow?
My question for you is, I'm hearing that everybody's getting this nasal swab.
Yeah.
And if you're breathing and you're perfectly healthy and you're breathing, and by the way, my friend designed these swabs
in Moscow, in Russia.
No, in Rutgers University.
Oh wow.
And they're putting this up the nose, but I had to travel in September, and they did a throat swab. That wasn't so fun, but it's a lot better than I don't understand why they would put it up. Your nose is your filter, so you're going to be breathing in, and it's going to trigger on any fragment of a virus, isn't it?
I'm not sure what you're saying. Say that slower. Okay. I didn't quite understand that.
Sure. If they're doing a nasal swab up your nose, right? You're walking around town and you're breathing in. Your nose is your filter.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have stuff in there.
Yeah, and they couldn't that be a false positive?
There's a big big problem with false positives. Those rapid tests are notoriously inaccurate, and you still see people lining up for those rapid tests. No, I don't know if that could exactly happen because I'm not exactly sure what they're testing for, to tell you the truth. But it seems like it would lead. It's you're logical. It seems logical to me. And I do know there are false positives and there's false negatives. You heard about that whole Elon Musk thing?
Yeah.
Where like he had
test negative.
This is such craziness.
He has another one. Which one am I going to do? Flip a coin?
Right. Really? It's absurd. It's absurd. Kevin, what's going on? In your opinion, you're a wise man. I've talked to you for years. You're a wise man. What's going on here? This cannot be real.
It's only people with deficiencies that are going to get ill. It's older people. I'm thinking that their doctor gave them all sorts of pharmaceuticals. They're deficient in different vitamins and trace vitamins. And the virus knocks and their cells let it in.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Do you have to wear masks in Russia?
Yeah, the madness started last week again, and you got to wear gloves. Most places will have.
You have to wear gloves? Wait a minute, you have to wear gloves too?
Yeah, in a food
oh
market,
my God.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Kevin, that's the music, buddy. I got to go, man. Yeah. Thank you so much for calling. Thanks for everything. I really appreciate you, Kevin. Thank you, buddy.
Sure.
All right, take care, man. All right, John Perkins coming up in our next segment. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back right after this. On the bright side, I'm Pharmacist Ben. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Pacific, and 10 to 11 Central, and 24/7 on the archive page at benfuchsarchives.com. Thank you to Peter in the UK for setting that up with the search engine. You can also check out brightsideben.com for archives and a search engine, and also the longevity products at brightsideben.com, pharmacistben.com, and criticalhealthnews.com. We've got blog posts, news stories, videos, lots of good health information on all our websites. And don't forget to take a look at our Truth Skin Health products, all formulated in my compounding pharmacy for wound healing. Wound healing equals beauty, and that's why we have over 1,400 4- and 5-star reviews at truthreviewed.com. Purchase products at truthtreatments.com, and check out our 4- and 5-star reviews at truthreviewed.com, truthreviewed.com. All right, I am super excited to talk to our guest, who I have been following now for probably going on 20 years. I've been reading his books. Just wonderful, incredible, mind-blowing, eye-opening work that John Perkins is doing. I read Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It completely changed my perspective, and anybody who thinks they understand geopolitics and has not read Confessions of an Economic Hitman or any of John's other books, he's got multiple books on economic hitmanry, I guess you'd say. Anybody who's not read these books really needs to take a look at them. New Confessions of an Economic Hitman, Hoodwinked, as well as The Secret History of the American Empire. Now, John has gotten into some really cool stuff involving indigenous wisdom. Please welcome to The Bright Side, John Perkins. Good morning, John.
Good morning. It's great to be with you on The Bright Side.
Yes, it's great to have you on the program. I have been, when I first read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, I guess probably pushing 20 years ago, it completely changed my life and changed everything I thought I knew about how the world works. I want to talk about your new stuff, the shape-shifting stuff, psychonavigation, and the new book, Touching the Jaguar. But could you indulge me a little bit and just tell your story and what you discovered and the whole idea of being an economic hitman and what that really means?
Yes. Well, I think it's. Well, first of all, let me start by saying that my official title is Chief Economist at a major international consulting firm out of Boston.
Okay, not economic hitman. Okay.
I didn't have a business guy that said economic hitman.
Right. But that's just so descriptive. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, we kind of said that tongue in cheek. It's a little bit like spooks. Spies don't have business cards that say spy or spook.
Right.
The business cards say commercial attaché at the embassy or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
But my job, and I have a staff of anywhere from 30 to 50 people at various times, and my job was really to identify countries with resources that our corporations want, like oil, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sister organizations. But the money did never actually go to the country. The country was in debt for the money, but the money went directly to our own corporations, big engineering companies like Halliburton, Brown and Root, Stoner Webster, Bechtel, General Electric manufacturing companies, so on and so forth, to build big infrastructure projects in the country. Things like power plants and industrial parks and highways that benefited a few rich families who own the industries, but basically hurt everyone else ultimately because money was diverted from education and healthcare and other social services to pay off the interest on the loans. And, so really what we were doing was creating a form of corporate colonialism. But at the beginning, I thought I was doing the right thing. I graduated from business school. The World Bank Business School teaches you that if you invest in this infrastructure type of programs, the economy grows, the GDP grows, and it does. You can show that statistically. But, over time, what I saw was that the statistics are totally skewed in favor of the rich. So, for example, if you take even the United States, we have 3 individuals here that have as much wealth as half the population of the United States.
Unbelievable.
If you do it doesn't take a lot of analysis to see that if those 3 individuals made a 10% return on their investments last year, and half the population lost 3%, we still show a gain of something over 3.5% of GDP. So these statistics are very, very, they create a false impression. They are not telling us, they're telling us about the rich economy, about the Wall Street, about the big businesses, but they're not telling us about overall prosperity of the average citizen.
That's why the average person doesn't benefit.
Right, and we talk about GDP per capita, which people think, well, that means that's what the average person makes in this country. It's not at all what the average person makes. It's simply that big number divided by the number in the population. It's also a very skewed number. So anyway, over time, I began to understand this, and that's when I decided I could no longer do this. And I should add one more thing. So it was fairly easy to convince leaders of countries to take these programs on because, first of all, they and their families profited. They made money because they own the industries. The leaders of these countries come from usually the most wealthy families. There are a few exceptions, but that's usually the case. And second of all, they knew that if they didn't play the game, they didn't go along with me, people we called the jackals would come in. And these are usually CIA-supported operatives that overthrow governments or assassinate leaders. And unfortunately, the United States has a long record that's admitted to with President Allende in Chile and Arben in Guatemala and Mossadegh in Iran. And the list goes on and on and on of people we've admitted to overthrowing or participating in the overthrow of these people.
So we set them up or we kill them. In other words, we set them up or overthrow them.
Yeah, there was not a cartoon I really like this, but me standing in front of a president saying, hey, in this hand, I've got a few $1 billion for you and your friends. And in this hand, I've got a gun. Which do you want?
Right. Helicopters. You mentioned helicopters and plane crashes as being a favorite.
Yeah, well, two of my clients, as I think you're referring to, democratically elected president of Ecuador, Jaime Roldos, and the head of state of Panama, Omar Torrijos, they refused to play the game, and both of them went down in private plane crashes 2 months apart from each other.
So that's the bad news. But you also talk about stories. It seems like you've gotten from your experience, you got to understand like the power of stories and the power of our beliefs and the power of the mind. And that's your new stuff. And that's so inspiring. And that's really what I want to get into. Tell us a little bit about this idea of touching the jaguar. And in the world today where fear is everywhere, where everybody's scared, in fact, we're encouraged to feel scared. How can touching the jaguar help in transforming fear into action? What's that about?
Yeah, that's great. So the subtitle of that book is Transforming Fear into Action to Change Your Life and the World. And that's really what the book is about, of how our perceptions mold our reality. And that's something that the shaman in the Amazon years ago saved my life, taught me.
Can you tell that story?
Well, yeah. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer back in 1960.
Hey, John, we got the music. I'm so sorry. Can you tell a story when you come back to the break? It's an awesome story, and it really exemplifies what you're talking about, transforming fear into action using mindset. John Perkins is with us, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. His new book is Touching the Jaguar. We'll be back with more of John Perkins on the bright side right after this. Don't go away. We're back on the bright side. We're talking to John Perkins, author of Confessions of an Economic Hitman. John, you have this great story about being in the rainforest where you really hit you the power of mindset. Can you tell us the story?
Sure. I went in the Peace Corps right out of business school in 1968. I was sent deep into the Amazon rainforest, living in what's called Shuar territory. The Shuar were hunters and gatherers. Living there, what we would call primitive lives, although I discovered it wasn't all that primitive in many respects. But so a couple of months after I'd been there, I got very, very ill. I couldn't keep any food down. I couldn't stand up without help. I was dying. And I was a 3-day walk through dense jungle and then terrible roads up into the Andes from the nearest medical facility. There was no way I could do that. So I was really resigned to dying. And a shaman offered to save my life. Now, in 1969, I'd never even heard of the shaman. I had no idea what was going on here. All I knew was this guy was very fierce looking. He had these tattoos on his face. He was, just wearing a kind of a short skirt thing.
Central casting?
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so that night, he said, I had no other option. So that night, he took me on the shamanic journey, what we might call a vision quest. And I have my eyes closed, and he says at one point, as I'm in an assaulted state, he says, touch the jaguar. Well, it's the middle of the night in the middle of the jungle, and I open my eyes, I look around, where's the jaguar? And he says, no, close your eyes to see the jaguar. So I close my eyes, and I get this image of a jaguar, and he says, touch it.
Wow.
And I did. And when I did, I heard a voice like my mother saying, the food and drink will kill you. And in that moment, I realized that I was eating some very strange foods by my standards that the Shuar eat. And they don't drink water. People in the Amazon don't drink river water because they know it's filled with organic matter. It's dangerous. So the women make a kind of beer by chewing and spitting a root, a yucca root, and that turns into alcohol. Then you can mix water with it. So I'm drinking a lot of this spit beer, eating a lot of squirming white bugs and other strange foods. And hearing this voice every time I did in my head, but perception, this perception idea, it'll kill you. At the same time, I saw how incredibly robust and healthy the Shuar are. The hunters and gatherers, the men are built like Tarzan. And people live to be very old if they're not killed in a hunting accident or a dugout canoe tipping over or something. So that night I saw that it wasn't the food and drink killing me, it was my perception of the food and drink. And after that, the shaman, and so I got healthy, and the shaman told me I needed to be his apprentice. Again, no interest in those days. There was no future in shamanism. But he saved my life. And when he taught me, he said, touching the jaguar means that we don't run from our fears. We've got to recognize our fears and anything that's blocking us from being healthy or from moving forward in our lives the way we want to. And only when we touch those fears can we transform the perceptions around the fears that then will help us create a new reality for ourselves.
So when we're separated... Go ahead.
Well, that's... as I studied with shamans in other parts of the world after that, in many different countries, and they all have that same belief. And then I realized that's the foundation for modern psychotherapy, for quantum physics, for marketing.
Yeah.
There is no reality. There's no United States. There's no Ecuador. There's no corporations. There's no religion. There's no culture except as we.
It's a story.
Yeah, the story. And, of course, that can give us great hope in this world today when we know that we've created some stories that are no longer working very well for us.
So it's like, do you think that's part of human nature? Like we have to do this, or we're compelled to make stories to live in our imagination?
It seems to be. It's part of it's part of who we are as human beings. We may be the only animals that do that. Of course, we don't know. I mean, I have an amazing cat who I swear she creates her own stories too.
Yeah, maybe animals do. Maybe we should give them some credit for doing that. So do you think we're living in a world where our stories are no longer serving us?
Absolutely. I think we've created what the economists are calling a death economy, which is an economic system that's consuming itself into extinction, basically chewing up in the short term all the resources it needs for the long term. And it's the problem behind climate change. It's the problem behind species extinction. It's behind all the starvation in the world. It's even behind the pandemic. This idea, this death economy, this economic system that's based on one perception, and that is that corporations need to maximize short-term profit. Businesses need to maximize short-term profits regardless of the social and environmental costs. And we individuals should maximize our materialistic consumption. Now, not everybody follows those perceptions exactly, but those are the prevailing perceptions. And those are terrible perceptions. Indigenous people, we always look to the long term. For 250,000 years, we human beings lived with the perception that we had to take care of our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. We had to create a better world for them. It's only been within fairly recent times that we've gone into this idea that today's stock market is what's really, really important, the quarterly report, and we have to maximize material consumption.
And that's just a story. I mean, we all assume that that's true, that we have to be bigger and better and bigger and better and bigger and better. But really, that's just a story.
It's just a perception. Yes, it's a story, a perception that creates a reality. And so what we need to do now is move into what we call a life economy. And this is an economic system that pays people, that gives investors good returns on their investments, to create systems to clean up pollution, to reuse all the gasoline that's leaked around gas stations and drilling sites around the world, and all the plastic that's floating around in the oceans, things like that regenerate destroyed environments, that recycle, that create new technologies. And we've been doing that with wind and solar, but we've still got a long way to go. And that's a life economy which is based on a perception that the goal of business and individuals is to maximize long-term benefits for ourselves, our children and grandchildren, and for nature, because without nature, who are we? So it's just a change of perception. It's a change of looking at success as being, people are successful when they promote and help benefit the long term rather than just the daily stock market or the short term.
Where does the education system fit into this, like kids in schools, teaching kids in schools?
Unfortunately, we've been taught this materialistic view, and that can change very, very quickly. Young kids are not into this at all. I mean, young kids have these stories that they tell themselves that they love the trees. They love to go out and play in nature, and they can create a world out there. I love the stories of King Arthur and Robin Hood, and I would go outside as a kid and I would play those stories. And today, the stories are being created to a large degree by computer games and the internet. And many of those stories reflect the death economy. They're about violence. They're about, in order for me to win, you got to lose. But we need to change that, and we can turn it around pretty quickly if we just start doing it. For me to win, you need to win too. This idea that there's never enough, that we don't live in a society where we can help each other out, that we've got to take everything we can possibly get. If I want more, you've got to have less. That's not necessary. That's not true. But unfortunately, the stories that we've been creating and are continuing to create have revolved around that. I do think that the coronavirus is teaching us something very important, and that is that we can change. Everybody has changed, and we can get off of flying long distances. I didn't have to fly out to you. I live near Seattle to be on this program.
Right.
And you were probably doing this before, but there's many things I've been doing recently that I would never have done before without actually being there, like signings, like bookstore signings, which we now do virtually. And
so you're hopeful? You're hopeful?
I am, yes. I think we've been moving in the B corporations, benefit corporations, conscious capitalism, the Green New Deal. There's so many things that have been moving us in that direction. And the coronavirus has taught us that we all live on one planet, and that every life form on this planet has been affected by this tiny microscopic virus.
That's amazing.
That's one hell of a teaching.
Yeah, that's a great story, too. All right. Hey, John, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. That was awesome. And your work has just been transformative for me personally, and I'm sure for many of our listeners. Thank you, John. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. Keep up your great work.
Thank you, John. Take care. That was John Perkins. His book, Touching the Jaguar, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. If you haven't read his stuff, man, you really got to. JohnPerkins.org. JohnPerkins.org. That's all for now. Thanks for listening to The Bright Side, friends. I am Pharmacist Ben. Have a wonderful, beautiful, awesome, spectacular day. We'll talk to y'all later, folks. Bye for now.